In this video I'm going to be looking at some aerial photographs in Colliers Wood at the end of the 1920s of the King's Head pub, the Merton bus garage next to it, and across the road the Merton board mills. So I'm starting off here on the Historic England website, the Aerial Photo Explorer, and there are quite a few photographs in the Colliers Wood area that I'm going to be looking at. So let's start off with this one, which was taken in June 1929. Let's zoom in. So this is the Merton High Street. That long building there is the bus garage, built in 1913. And here are the board mills. Let's go a bit further. Now we can see here this building, the King's Head pub, the Young's pub, and this is the original style, or the previous style to the current building. And this was rebuilt in 1931. So this is a good photograph of how that pub looked a couple of years before it was demolished and rebuilt. So a key feature then of the Merton bus garage is this curved building. A better view is on the next photo. This is also June 1929. So here we can see that the way the building faces the road, the bus garage faces the road, and then curves round. And here's the reason: the garden of the King's Head pub fans out from the street. So here we can see the front of the King's Head pub and the back garden with lots of tables laid out, and possibly another bar area over here. I wonder if they had barbecues. Probably. 1929. So this pub had been there since, well, in theory since the 15th century. As to the actual extent of the land that Young's owned, I'm not entirely sure, but we can see that it certainly had a spreading out footprint at the back, so that in 1913, when the bus garage was built, they had to curve it round. I'm sure they would have loved to have bought the pub at that time and made the building all the way from here down to the street. Across the road from that, we can see the buildings of the Merton board mills. And zoom out. So we'll look at another photograph at a different angle. This negative has some damage on it, hence these black spots. But the reason I'm showing it to you is that here we can clearly see the River Wandle. And they're the open-air swimming baths that were also built in 1913 that I referred to in my previous video. And here we can see the Royal Six Bells pub. Now, this is a better photograph. Still got a bit of damage on it, but we can now see the bus garage from the side. And opposite, the board mills. A lot of land to be developed there. I think this is basically where the Lion Tower was built. In my previous video showing in 1924 aerial view of this land, the underground station at Colliers hadn't been built yet, and I wondered whether the shops at the side had been built at the same time as the underground station. Well, we can see now that it wasn't. So here's the underground station. This is 1929. It had been open for 3 years. And the bookmakers and the post office and the other shops down to the road here haven't been built yet, but the housing estate of North Gardens, South Gardens have been built on this land, which was owned by Emmanuel College. Let's have a look at that open air swimming pool that we saw in the 1924 aerial view. And can't quite see the swimming pool there, but it was demolished in the 1930s. Although I've been subsequently told that the buildings may have been demolished in the 1930s, the swimming pool remained and was useful for air raid shelter purposes during the Second World War. So let's have a look at the King's Head pub I took this photograph in December of 2004, not long after it had closed. Unfortunately, the ground floor is all boarded up, but on the left-hand side, we can see the entrance to the public bar. I'll zoom in a bit on that, because there's a year above it that says 1496. It's quite a claim, isn't it? Now, I use Helen Osborne's book, In and Around London, A History of Young's Pubs, where she tells us, between 1117 and 1538, there was a priory at Merton, founded by the Augustinian order. Henry VI and his court spent time here in the 15th century. Like most priories of the time, Merton would have had brewed its own beer, and if the King's Head does date from 1496 as it claims, then it could have been built to sell off the surplus beer the priory was brewing and to act as a hospice for travellers. So this year of 1496 attached to the building is a suggested date. Well, I don't know if there's any proof, and Helen Osborne has researched this, and she says, well, if it does date from that year, as it claims, she goes on to tell us that one authority believes an inn has stood here since 1594. Even so, that's still quite a long time ago, isn't it? Even if it's not 100 years prior to that, of 1496. And she says it perhaps taken over the hospitality tradition associated with the priory after the dissolution. Yes, so the priory was dissolved in 1538 along with the monasteries as a part of the Henrician Reformation. Young and Bainbridge, this was the forerunner of the Young's Company, first put a lease of it in 1831, and the freehold was bought in 1899. It was rebuilt in 1931. So going back to my photograph, as I say, above the public bar was this claim of 1496, but even so, it's quite possible that the original pub went back to 100 years after that. And on the right-hand side, we see the entrance to the saloon bar, and above that, it says 1931, which is the date of this building. Took a picture of the sign, or signs. Not entirely sure what king that is supposed to be, or was supposed to be, pardon my grammar. And this is from a street view, Google Street View from 2025. The Young's Pub, as I say, closed down in 2004 when I took that original photograph, and it was bought out by the bus company that runs the Merton Bus Garage, and they turned it into their offices. They've retained the signage that says 1496 Public Bar and 1931 Saloon, and even though my photograph showed the windows at the front being boarded up, I've looked at another photograph, not a particularly good quality one, I didn't want to show it here, but it does suggest that the window frames on the ground floor are exactly the same as it was at the pub. And here's an aerial view, also from Google Maps, showing King's Head and the Merton Bus Garage at the side of it. And all that space that was at the back is now a car park area. So let's now have a look at the Merton Bus Garage. This street view of May 2025 tells us that it's called the Merton Bus Garage, and it's Go Ahead London. For historical purposes, I'm looking at a blog post dated November 24th, 2013, because that was the 100th year anniversary of the Merton Bus Garage. And the photos are interesting. Not so much for me for the buses, but for the view towards the back of the King's Head pub. We can see the distinctive chimneys there. So this area is that car park area that was part of the pub garden of the King's Head. Inside the bus garage, and from the outside, with a better view of the access to the rear car park. So this is 2013. So now let's have a look at the Merton board mills, for which my source of information comes from Eric Montague's book in the Mitcham History series, number 9, on Collier's wood. So now I'm looking at a map of 1894. We can see the Merton High Street. This PH here is the King's Head pub. We can see the extent of the ground at the back. This PH here, over here, by the way, is the Royal Six Bells. And across the road from the King's Head pub, there's a paper mill called the Merton Abbey Mills. So this is the Merton Abbey Mills in 1894. And it was the following year, 1895, that the first entry appears in the Paper Mills Directory of the Metropolitan Paper Company, which had just taken over the premises. In 1897, the Metropolitan Paper Company's mills were producing between 30 and 40 tons of paper a week. In 1923, the old Metropolitan Paper Company's buildings were replaced by those of the Merton board mills, a concern which became bankrupt in 1925. In 1927, it was resurrected as the new Merton board mills. So this aerial photograph then is of 1929, showing the new Merton board mills of having just been built 4 years previously. The mills were badly damaged by German bombs in the Blitz, but soon after the Second World War they were rebuilt, and as the new Merton board mills finally occupied the whole of the land to the south and west, formerly occupied by the Morris and Company. Eric Montague goes on to say, the huge buildings of the board mills and the 3 tall chimneys serving a bank of coal-fired marine boilers were to dominate the skyline of Merton for half a century. Efficient combustion, flue gas washing and grit arresters ensured that atmospheric pollution and nuisance were reduced to a minimum. But the size of the works, railway goods yards and coal wharves did little for the environment. The mills finished their days as the Merton packaging works of the Dickinson Robinson Group, and in February 1980, when the mills were visited by the Mayor and Mayoress of Merton as guests of the management, emphasis was placed on the role played by the works in recycling waste paper. According to local press in 1980, £4 million had been invested by the Dickinson Robinson Group in modernising the works, which were capable of processing nearly 60,000 tonnes of recycled paper a year, producing laminated fibreboard for packing cases used for, amongst other things, meat, fish and horticultural trades. The investment confirmed the firm's faith in the future. 5 years later, the Merton works had been declared redundant and the buildings were being demolished to provide a site for the Savacentre, or the Sainsbury supermarket or hypermarket, as part of the Priory Park retail development scheme. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, press that like button. Bye for now.